been walking beneath streetlights. I've been walking, cause I can't find peace on these nights. I've been walking, but my strides are getting slower. Still I'm walking, but I don't know where I'm going. I've been looking for love, but only found deception. Told my secrets to some people who have not kept them.
Hi, welcome to Urban Talk. Hey. Hi, welcome to Urban Renal Talk with Tamika.
And Steve, what's going on, Tamika? What was you thinking about?
No, my son, he was up there whispering something to me, and I'm like, what? It's okay. We're live, and we're in our homes, and in our homes we have children and husbands and life.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
How y'all doing?
Absolutely. How's everyone doing this evening? Thanks for watching the show. What's going on, Tamika?
Nothing's going on, Steve.
You know, we've been this subject we're going to talk about tonight. You know, we finally got to it. Which the show is called Blackball, but really it's the involuntarily discharging of dialysis patients from dialysis clinics, and mostly it's disruptive, as they say, disruptive dialysis patients. And I had read a case study today, and it's arguments on both sides, but the main when it comes down to it, should a patient's life, which they need to depend on life-saving treatment 3 times a week, should their disruptive behavior be the, should
they be kicked out the unit?
Line for them not to get exactly, and then be labeled saying they can't go to other units, and the only way that they could get treatment is at the hospital, but that would be only on emergency basis. It wouldn't be a steady 3 days a week, which is needed.
Right. See, I don't think they should be blackballed. I don't think they should be blackballed at all. Now, is this a safety issue between staff and patient?
Yeah,
I don't know, because
we're going
I'm
to talk about that.
Okay.
Right, because I've been in the situation as well. Right. And so to help us talk about it, let's bring on our special guest. She don't need no introduction, but we're going to give her one. Yes. Kidney warrior, advocate, expert, home dialysis, no other than Don P. Mormon. We're going to get the VIP introduction. What's going on, Don? We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm loving it. Oh, I'm feeling
the music, right? The music.
Yeah. That's Jared's favorite music. When it comes on, Jared, he be doing this dance as well.
Oh, man, I love that. I feel so special.
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing really good, thank you. I mean, still on lockdown and all of that, but we making it through.
Right, right. So Don, for people who just watching the show for the first time or don't know you, can you just give us a synopsis of your story before we get in to this important topic?
All right, I'm gonna make it real brief. I've had kidney disease since 1993. I've been on peritoneal dialysis, in-center hemo. I had a kidney transplant, and now I'm on home hemodialysis. I did that for 5 years, and I felt so good that I wanted to do even better, and I wanted to feel better. I wanted to do more, and I've been doing nocturnal home hemodialysis for the past 5 years. I've been an advocate for over 20 years with ESRD Network and other national organizations. And I'm just a busy chick out here trying to really make a difference in this world for patients with kidney disease and share what my experience is so that we can all find wellness and we can live better lives in spite of kidney disease, because we can do it.
Wow, absolutely, absolutely incredible. So Don, Tamika and I, maybe about a couple of months ago, we talked about patients being blackballed, but we know that it's more to it than just a person just getting kicked out of a unit. But I read a case study on there seems to be emerging trends in discharging disruptive dialysis patients. And the thing is, a lot of patients who go to dialysis don't know that, or may know, but the majority don't know that this takes place. They may see the person disruptive in the clinic because in a lot of the units you have open bay style seating. So as much as they try to do the HIPAA privacy, is so much you only can do. So if someone quote quotes goes off because there's something going on, other patients are able to view that. But what's so interesting is that you have maybe like 500, almost 600,000 individuals undergoing kidney dialysis, and we're not sure exactly how many are doing in center. But when you look at that large number, we know that patients who have ESRD and that's on dialysis experience many challenges, such as emotional, physical, and financial burdens. And some of this can maybe erupt in the unit, out of the unit. But do you think that that's a reason for someone to be medically discharged from a dialysis facility when they need these life-sustaining treatment?
You know, Steve, this is a really, really difficult subject because absolutely a patient has rights. We have a right to receive medical care.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Don. Let me just say one thing. And for our listening audience, in the United States, there's an estimated 1,000 patients that are annually involuntary discharged from their dialysis clinics. All right, Don, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know, there's over 80% of the 500 or almost 600,000 patients that are in the United States right now on in-center dialysis. So we're talking about like at least 500,000 or more patients receiving their dialysis treatment in centers. Now we got to think about the fact that everybody has a different economic situation. Everybody has a different social environment that they're coming from. Everybody's got different problems. We got all kinds of look at the situation that we're in now with health disparities as a whole in the healthcare system. So there's going to be some people that are in our dialysis units that require special care that the average dialysis facility cannot provide. Let's say a patient has mental health issues.
Right.
Let's say a patient may be having something going on at home where they need some type of social intervention, where our social workers really need to be helping that patient to adjust to life on dialysis. There may be some food insecurity issues that are causing people to be stressed. When I started dialysis, after being in the facility for a few years, I had to quit my job, and that caused a whole lot of problems in my household, because I went from making over $30,000 a year down to $1,000 a month. That's going to cause problems in a home. I was stressed and I was pissed off about my situation, and I took it to the dialysis facility with me because I was mad because I had to be getting this treatment. And here comes somebody now. They done had an argument with their husband or wife at home. They come to put my needles in. You infiltrate me. Now I'm ready to go off. But you don't understand what it is that I'm going through. And you don't know how the staff members need sensitivity training. They don't know how to deal with an angry Black woman, or they don't know how to deal with an angry patient, and this is how this whole thing gets out of hand. So I believe that every patient should be judged on their own individual circumstances and their own individual merit. So some patients, you don't have no choice but to say, I'm sorry, we've tried to work with you, we've done interventions, this, that, and the other, and we cannot facilitate your care here. And
Well,
but the patient slipping through the cracks is unacceptable.
Okay. Now, Tamika, I definitely understand what Dawn is saying. I think for me, the issue comes into the label blackballed, because social workers, who are the main people who may deal with the person that they're having an issue with, whether you want to say disruptive or whatever the case may be. But according to Medicare, the conditions for coverage, that it's important for facilities to make a good faith effort and not blacklist the patient from other potential facilities. And that's what's happening.
Absolutely.
So if a patient was disruptive at that facility and they got a lot of sister units around, of course it's going to get out to the other units, preventing patients being accepted, because there's no mandate saying that the units have to accept the patients. So what ends up happening, they end up in the emergency room on the emergency basis, and that's only because of
the unit don't want them.
Well, no, I want to tell you the act. It's an act that they can't. It's called the Emergency Treatment and Active Labor Act. It requires hospitals to provide care to anyone needing emergency health care treatment, regardless of citizenship, legal status, or ability to pay. And when me and Don was talking, when Don and I was talking earlier, what's the protocol for the emergency treatment? I mean, so when the person comes into the emergency, their potassium level has to be a certain level before they get dialysis, even though they feel bad.
That's
and maybe they got their respiratory breathing may be out of whack. Maybe they can't get their emergency treatment because they don't fall within certain protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can add to that because I heard of a story where patients had to go to the emergency room for dialysis, and if their potassium wasn't high enough, they would go outside, sit in the car, and eat a bunch of bananas so that their potassium would go up so that they could come back in and get tested again and get dialysis.
Wow, and that's so dangerous. That's so dangerous for them to do that.
So why? See, that's the point. Why should someone need to go through those extreme measures just to get retested, get dialysis because they were discharged from a unit? That again, that goes with some of the actions that organizations defend. Tamika, here are some of the actions that, and some of them are rare, but these are some of the actions that some facilities use. The patient has no insurance. The patient does not follow medical advice. The patient has a mental health disorder. The patient is violent and is a risk to other patients and staff. Now, that right there, you definitely need to adhere to that. And then the patient is disruptive. But when they say where the patient is disruptive, they come back and say when this reason is explored, it often turns out that the patient has expressed quality of care concerns, labeling the patient as disruptive and involuntarily discharging him or her is a form of retaliation, which there's been a lot talked about, and patients understand the ability of dialysis centers to do this, and many describe feeling intimidated, captive, and vulnerable.
Right. Now, what are they saying as far as what is that patient doing that he's quote unquote disruptive? Because I've had patients pull their needle out and they just put them on a different side of the room versus discharging.
Well, I guess like Don said, that's a case by case basis. But in this article, and Don, let me ask you this, because you actually experienced this as a patient, far as outpatient and then coming home. You established a patient-physician relationship, and legally, the nephrologist has a continuing legal duty to treat the patient until the need for service is lawfully terminated. Now, we know ESRD patients will need medical service until the end of their life. Now, with that being said, how do you have Don, you had a facility interdisciplinary team, which consists of a registered nurse, a physician, the social worker, and a dietitian. Now, when there's a problem going on, shouldn't the physician be know about it right away instead of finding out or having the facility people who work with the patients every day kind of give a biased side, because the doctor sees a patient maybe twice a month and the staff sees them every day? It couldn't that be kind of a biased situation?
It absolutely is. It's always two sides. There's three sides to every story, right? There's the staff side, there's the patient side, and then somewhere in between there's the truth. And the physician has an obligation to decide, to kind of navigate how this is going to be, how it's going to be handled. One of the things that is supposed to take place is there's supposed to be an interdisciplinary team meeting with the patient, and if the patient chooses, a representative of their choice to discuss what has transpired in the unit, and for there to be some kind of mediation take place. Unless, and the conditions for coverage specifically state that the only reason that they don't really tolerate, only thing they don't tolerate is violence. If
absolutely
violence or threats of violence, physical harm, or something like that, they can involuntarily discharge you immediately without an interdisciplinary meeting or anything. You're not allowed to hit anybody.
Right. Now, what about threats? Because I've been in units where patients made threats. Some of the patients left the unit. Some was kicked out the unit.
That's up to the staff. They can decide whether, say for example, this happens all the time. You get infiltrated, or somebody, like Steve said, a quality of care issue. The patient sees it, the patient responds to it. We're upset. This is my life on the line, and I'm calling you MFs and so on and so on. And when you get off from work, my son is going to be outside. He's going to be waiting for you. That's a threat.
That's a threat. And you know what? Unfortunately, I'm the technician that will be like, tell your son to come now. Because patients forget that we're human. So you want to call me out? I'm just street just like you. Where they at?
See, but now, let's take it.
But I'm wrong. But
because if you get one of those nurses or one of those technicians or another staff member that's not about it, they take that and they scared now.
Right. They petrified. Yes.
To do their job. So
yes, because they're scared.
They're going to put pen to paper. They're going to record it, and the patient is going to have to suffer the consequences for what they said. So that sensitivity training needs to come in.
Right. And you know what? The technician never says that I infiltrated the patient. What the technician or nurse says is, this patient just told me to get off his arm. Not that the patient was requesting to be stuck by someone else.
Right.
And the staff member refused. So that's when all this went down. You get what I'm saying?
That's when things get out of control. It's
communication.
It's
communication. Right. Yeah. And then what they do is they'll tell that the patient is this, that, and the other, like some type of crazy way. Then they'll go to the DON. The DON will go to the doctor. And now this patient who had this one incident needs to be pulled aside, not for the fact that the technician or the nurse didn't listen to him or her. So sometimes it's a big situation made from nothing.
From nothing. Yeah.
So this patient is getting put out the unit for nothing.
And Dawn, let me ask you, I guess I'm going off a case study, but medical directors and attending nephrologists must act in the best interest of patients and placing the patient's interest pretty much above their own. Do you think discharging a patient from a unit constitute that?
It all depends on the situation, Steve, because I have seen some situations whereas a patient honestly deserved to be discharged. There are instances where patients deserve to be discharged. There has been some egregious act where a patient has been disruptive or been violent, or a patient has made other patients around them feel uncomfortable, other patients around them feel unsafe, or the staff members feel unsafe.
Sexual harassment.
Everybody has a right to feel safe and to have a nice, peaceful treatment.
Right.
And if somebody comes into the city or into the unit that's going to jeopardize the other patients in there from receiving that care, something's got to be done. Now, again, I'm not saying that you're supposed to skip over the criteria, because there's a whole chain of events that have to be in place before a patient is supposed to be involuntarily discharged. And I can say from my experience as, working, with the ESRD networks and stuff, they are supposed to advocate on that patient's behalf and try to stop that involuntary discharge from taking place. But if it's of outside that criteria, this is why it's important for patients to know you have
their rights
as a patient, but you also have responsibilities as a patient. And
I think they need a checklist.
Yeah, you can't. It's certain things you can't do.
Yeah, but
no, go ahead, Tamika.
No, I was gonna say, I think that before you discharge a patient, you checked everything off on this checklist, and you're able to give the patient this checklist and say, hey, we tried this.
Correct.
And it didn't work, and so we're not just throwing you out. You basically put yourself out.
And then there is also the behavioral agreement and contract that the interdisciplinary team sits down with the patient. If they need to get a family member involved or whatever, they get people sit down at the table and say, listen, this behavior is unacceptable. You cannot do this here. And you've had this instance, and this instance. We're putting you on a 90-day contract.
Right.
If we have any more outbursts or anything like that, then,
you're gone. Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, let me talk about something right quick. Let me just read something. Dialysis facilities have policies and procedures in place outlining their admission criteria for new patients. A dialysis facility cannot admit a patient into its clinic without a nephrologist who has agreed to treat the patient. So one thing that's not talked about, and I want to just shed light on, is a term called cherry picking.
Yeah.
And that's a growing concern, and it's unethical. And basically what it is cherry picking of patients, and by either by nephrologists or dialysis facilities. And basically what it is actively excluding patients with perceived negative qualities. Yeah. A physician or dialysis facility that becomes focused on the characteristics of the population of patients instead of the ethical and medical need to treat patients in a specific clinical situation may be tempted to manipulate the patient population by excluding certain types of patients.
And we know that happens. I'm not going to sit up here and say it doesn't happen. It happens.
Yep, I've witnessed it happen. I've witnessed it.
Myself too.
Yeah.
Because you read the history and physical of the patient that's coming, and based on that, if you see anything, they'll like tell the physician, no, we don't want to accept that patient because they may have psychiatric issues and they don't want to have
to deal
with it. Right. I've seen it in like a certain type of neighborhood where they didn't want a lot of problem patients because it was kind of wealthy people.
See?
And they just wanted a peaceful unit. And they only had 8 chairs, and they did not want this patient that was coming from a psych unit. Okay. And the patient didn't come.
Yeah.
So, Don,
they can legally say that we do not have staff or we do not have provisions to appropriately care for this patient.
Yes, I've seen that also. Yep.
Okay, so Don, can you just explain to our viewers then, with all this being said, what's the purpose of the ESRD Network program, which is under CMS contract.
Right.
Explain to people how they get involved in this. And we know that they're not mandated to make a facility accept a disruptive patient, but what is their focus and what do they do?
Okay, so CMS pays for 80% of our dialysis care. They pay for 80% of it. So CMS from Baltimore is not coming to every dialysis facility, making sure that in all 50 states, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They establish federal guidelines, and what they do is they appoint ESRD Networks to oversee the quality of care that's provided in these dialysis facilities. And there are 18 networks throughout the country, and they are separated by how many patients there are within a specific region. So, for example, I'm here in New York. New York State has I think we have 30-some thousand ESRD patients in New York State. So we have one network. New Jersey has, I believe there's New Jersey and Puerto Rico and Guam is within one network. So it all depends on the population of patients. But what their job is to make sure that every dialysis and transplant facility is operating according to the conditions for coverage and providing the quality of care that is articulated in that federal register. And they are there also to advocate for the patients to be sure that those regulations are being followed. And that includes complaints, grievances, education, quality issues, and involuntary discharges.
Right. Even with all that said and what they supposed to adhere to, yet we still have 1,000 people, estimated 1,000 people being involuntary discharged from dialysis units.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I can't speak to all 18 networks because I only worked at one.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that sometimes there are instances where the network cannot intervene, or they can't say they have to let the discharge go because it's such an egregious act, or all of the criteria has been followed. A patient may have become violent in the facility. They talked to the patient. They got the family involved. They had a psych evaluation. They put the patient on a behavioral agreement, and this person turned around and slugged the tech.
Now, well, talk about that, Don. What is the actual CMS guidelines for, or what's the criteria for discharging a patient?
There's two main reasons for discharging a patient. Number one is for non-payment. So, patient, when you come to the unit, you get your rights and responsibilities. Your responsibility as a patient is to make sure that you go down to Social Security or do whatever you got to do to file your paperwork so that facility can get paid. That's part of your responsibilities as a patient. If that facility is not getting paid due to your negligence, and you have neglected to go down and take care of your insurance issues, and they have tried to work with you and tried to, social workers come to you and tried to tell you, look, you got to call Social Security, or you got to call your insurance company and get this straightened out. And they try to work with you on that, and the patient just says, I ain't doing it. They have a right to discharge you because they're not getting paid for the services they provide. That's one thing.
That's understandable.
Right. Then the second thing is violence, again, physical violence or threats of violence, to the point where the staff member or the patient or anybody in that facility does not feel safe. That's the two main criteria for involuntary discharge. All of that other stuff about communication and the patient said this and that, those are not grounds for involuntary discharge. That's grounds for interdisciplinary team meeting. It's grounds for intervention. They're supposed to try to resolve that among the staff and the patient at the facility level. It is not grounds for involuntary discharge.
Do you think that sometimes they discharge patients out of being biased?
They try to, and that's where your network or the state is supposed to come in and intervene on the patient's behalf.
I think more patients need to know about the network and the state, because they don't know. They don't know their right, period.
And I have to tell you this, when you go to work tomorrow or next time you go to work, look, everybody that's listening to us tonight, when you go to dialysis, you look on the walls of your dialysis center, because your facility is not supposed to be open and operating without the information for the patient to get in contact with their ESRD network and the Department of Health. It has to be posted in the patient waiting room where a patient can see it. So they don't tell you about it. They're not going to tell you about it. Our large dialysis facilities want you to call customer service and customer care. You don't have to do that. You can call your ESRD network, or you can call a state at any time. And you have to know that as a patient. They have to know that. If you're not satisfied with the care that you receive, you don't have to just sit there and accept that. And don't take the matters into your own hands, because that starts the ammunition. It can start a file on you where you can get blackballed. You let the people who's getting paid for it, you let them advocate for you.
So, Dawn, so what happens to the person that falls in this category and they have to end up, say no unit will accept them? Say someone's in an area where maybe DaVita is the ruling facilities, and say it might be 4 units in 15, 20 mile radius, something like that, and the person's down south. What do they do if they fall and then those DaVitas don't take them? And of course, if a person is discharged from the facility, they're more likely going to be discharged from the nephrology practice. So now they got to find a new kidney doctor. And what if, like, it's only one nephrologist or 2 nephrology practices in that town? What happens to that person? Because we know that stuff like that is down south where it's rural areas.
And that's what's very dangerous, because if something like that happens, the patient has to dialyze at the hospital. And that's where it becomes very, very dangerous, because again, we going back to that. You can't dialyze 3 times a week. You may only get 2 treatments a week, depending on your potassium. And this is where patients end up, losing their lives.
So do a patient, and see, this is where I tried to find some legal minds to come on, but legally, does a patient have any legal recourse if you know of?
Again, it all depends on what the patient, what happened. It all depends on what happened. Again, if you hit a staff member, or if you threaten to blow up the facility, what can you do?
But does that, if okay, I understand you got people who assault people who may go to jail, whatever. But if you hit someone out of anger because of a mental situation or something that you may not have impulse control, who knows? But is that a reason to subject someone to possible death because you did that?
It's up to the medical director and the staff to decide whether they want to continue to treat that patient.
Yeah, I feel
they cannot be at risk of their personal safety or the safety of the patients at the facility.
Right.
It's not acceptable. Now we could say maybe the patient is on meds and they missed their meds that day.
Right.
And they had an outburst.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now it's time to sit down with the team and let's get a 90-day agreement. The patient agrees that they're going to take their meds. The patient agrees that they're going to try to calm down, and they're able to work past it. But you cannot continuously be disruptive, or you can't do it like that.
Right. I think that if it's a first time offense, because I've recently seen a patient hit a staff member. And the only reason why that patient hit the staff member because the lady, she was a white lady and it was a black patient. And he knew not to try that with any of the other staff members. And he did that to her. And I think that was wrong for him to do that. And what they did was he had to write a letter of apology, and he can no longer have her.
Yeah, see?
He can no longer have her.
Resolve the issue so the patient could continue. But they didn't have to do that.
No.
They didn't have to do that. They could have put him out. He hit her.
Now, let me ask you this. According to HIPAA, if a patient gets involuntary discharge from a facility, don't they have HIPAA rights? Is it that facility that discharged and they had the right to report to another facility what went on with that patient?
That has to go in their chart.
There should be something in place to prevent that from happening to.
Well, actually, it's not directly related to your health care. That's something that you did. It's something that you kind of voluntarily did. So that goes in your chart. Your behavior, that psychosocial behavior,
Sure.
It's part that goes in your chart. You can't get it out.
What I don't like about when they're being blackballed is when they send them to another unit, they tell them the occurrence that happened.
Yeah, they know.
They don't look at it like people change. They may be going through something.
Right.
What they do is they tell everything, and then the staff finds out, and they're like, "No, don't bring that patient here." I don't think that's right because that patient needs somewhere to go.
Right, and see now there's been instances where the ESRD network has come in and advocated on a patient's behalf. They call the new facility and say, "Look, this is what happened over here. It was a communication issue, and I give this patient 90 days and see how it is, see if anything happens. And if there's any action or anything like that, then you don't have to accept the patient. But we're asking you to give this patient a chance."
Right. And I think that's what they should do. And I don't think that all of the staff members should know what the patient did to get kicked out the unit, because what it creates is another type of biasness against that patient once that patient gets there.
Absolutely.
So it makes
they sit around the lunch table and talk about it. You know that, Tamika.
I know what you're talking about. I eat lunch in my car.
But you know what I'm saying. I mean, it leaks. It does leak. And
right, and that's why I say that, because there was a case where you know, that did happen, and no one got a chance to know this patient. And once I got to know the patient, I'm like, well, hold up. What we read was nothing like who that person is.
Exactly.
And she was like, Tamika, I just was going through a rough time in my life. You know, I was evicted and this and that. I was like, wow. And she was like, y'all found I see it. She was like, wow, like thank you. She was like, thank you for giving me a chance.
And Dawn, I want to ask you just your opinion on something based on what I'm about to read. So we know the Hippocratic Oath is an oath historically taken by physicians swearing to practice medicine ethically.
Yes.
The oath includes the statement, I will prescribe regimen for the good of my patients according to my ability and my judgment and never do any harm. And it says most physicians comply or strive to comply with this oath, even with the complexities of medicine. The obligation to treat a non-compliant, abusive dialysis patient is one area where the struggle continues because, again, you have an oath, right, that you swore by
to do no harm.
Right, but yet on the flip side, because as Tamika said, maybe something happened, patient had a bad day. Now you're going to discharge this person and put them in a position where you can jeopardize their life. You know they're going to need dialysis until they get a transplant. That probably already messed up any possible future, transplantation. So, I mean. This is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tamika.
No, I was going to say, I mean, or they could do it another way. They can open a unit for just, quote unquote, and I hate to say problem, but just for patients that can't seem to get along with certain type of people or something like that.
What do you think about that, Don?
You have that. It's called a hospital.
No, I'm talking about an outpatient unit.
Now, okay, let's take that into consideration. How you gonna staff that?
Just nurses.
Who want to work there?
Oh, I'm not a nurse. I'm not going there.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm sorry going because I'll be fired by the end of the week.
No, but wait a minute. No. Let me interject. Hold on. As a nurse, let me interject with that because there has to be a root cause to the behavior. And once you investigate that root cause and figure out why that person is behaving that way, then we can address the root cause of it. So I believe, Tamika, something that you always talked about is psychotherapy in the facility. If that can be offered as an alternative means, that can possibly flame the problems to where we don't have to say, oh, let's have an independent unit for disruptive patients. We could maybe send them to psychotherapy or alternative to see what's really going on behind that behavior. Let's address that cause of the behavior and see how we can move forward so the patient can still receive his life-saving treatment of dialysis and not be penalized for emotional or mental outbursts.
Right, or maybe, or maybe they can have like not social work. Maybe they can have like a counselor sit at the unit with them. The unit for, I don't want to say problem patients. I hate, say problem patients, but for patients that can't get along with others, like you said, Steve, to kind of get down to the root of it. Because if they're in a regular unit, there's no time. There's no time for someone to really sit here and get down to the nitty-gritty about it. But if they only have 4 or 8 chairs, then I think that's enough time for them to go to each patient and say, hey, how's your day going? What can we help you with? To help them have a smoother treatment. And maybe less anxiety, because I think a lot of the anger comes from anxiety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Dawn, one thing I just wanted to revisit what you said in the beginning was cultural competence sensitivity training, because you have some staff members who don't know how to communicate, and they may get in a verbal altercation because maybe a patient may have a complaint about something and that person don't like what they said, and they may antagonize that situation. And it may not be that patient, it may be the staff antagonizing that.
So, you know what, Steve? You have a great point. So what I noticed, so I work with a lot of Filipino patients, and when I first got into dialysis, if you curse, it's like the worst thing in the world
to them.
And then it's very offensive. So the patients used to say, "Oh, F this, F that," and they were in so much trouble, and they was just having genuine conversation. And they weren't trying to attack them. They just was like, "Man, get that off the table." And it's like, "Why do you have to talk like that?" And those patients used to get into so much trouble until they had a culture sensitivity class.
Yes.
And they try to help them, like, these are just words. Though in your culture, these words mean something else. This is just words. They're just words.
Yeah.
So it did help to get a little better, but I got fired, so I don't know how.
But see, for you, that's just every day. You know, that's the
language.
Vernacular. Right. But that's why, and the studies show that the majority of patients who are involuntarily discharged, believe it, I'm sure you believe it, but they're Black men.
Yeah, I can believe it, because out of fear.
Correct.
Hey, I had a situation.
We have in society, we have inside healthcare.
I was just about to say that.
And Tamika, I had a situation where I went and worked at a unit, PRN. It was a DaVita unit, right? And the tech told me that it was the tech's patient told me that the person wanted like 2 Tums and Tylenol or something like that, right? So I go get it, right? And I go to the patient and say, "Mr. So-and-so, did you want the 2 Tums of Tylenol?" He like, "Get the F away from me. I didn't ask for that." And I'm like, whoa. But the way he said it, it was like, okay. And I just went about my way, didn't say nothing else to that patient. But I mean, you know, and I know as well, we've been in many situations where we've been the brunt of someone's anger. Regardless if something happened at home or something happened in a unit, didn't have nothing to do with us, or whatever the case, and the anger gets taken out, misdirected anger, to the staff.
Right. I think that they should look at the anger before they begin to push the patients out and really see the underlying issue, because no one lashes out just for no reason. It's just like a baby is just not going to cry for no reason. Something is making this person act in the manner that they are. So try to get them to the root of it, or get that patient some help.
Right.
And, you know, that's where I know when I worked at the network, that's some of the things that we would suggest. Has the had a psych evaluation. You know, have you got the family involved? Did you find out what's going on at home?
Right. And what I learned was a lot of the men, so this is just some of the units I've been to and some of the men that I've talked to, a lot of times they're sexually frustrated.
Go ahead now.
Seriously, they are sexually frustrated, and they're just tired, and their wife left them, or they had to move back home with their mom, or some type of something is going on, but a lot of them are sexually frustrated.
Yeah.
Right. And Don, let me just say one thing that you had mentioned to people about going into the clinic. Now, you was talking about this, which is part of the condition for coverage, the posting of rights. And this is what you were speaking of. And people, this is something that is put out by CMS that a lot of kidney warriors don't know about or even care about, but this is very important. And it says the dialysis facility must prominently display a copy of the patient's rights in the facility, including a current state agency and ESRD network mailing addresses and telephone complaint numbers where it can be easily seen and read by patients. And then it also goes in and says the patient has the right to receive resource information for dialysis modalities not offered by the facility, including information about alternative scheduling options for working patients. And Donna, one thing that happens is you got facilities that don't do peritoneal or home treatment, but they don't tell the patient that those options are available because they know if they leave, they'll be missing that money.
Right, especially when they have real insurance.
That's in violation of the conditions for coverage. I mean, if the state found out that they were not educating patients on their treatment options, they would be cited for that. So what they do is they come around and they'll give out a little piece of paper once a year so that they can document that they did education. And you done gave it to a person that don't read English, or a person that can't read, or a person that can't see.
I was just about to say that, Dawn. So out in the lobbies, they have this little writing. And a lot of the patients are over 40 years old. And let me tell you, I'm over 40. I can't see that well no more. I need glasses. They need to make it a little larger.
Yes.
So the patients can read it.
Yes.
And not have to zoom down with their head and able to read that information.
I mention that all the time when I'm doing advocacy meetings and on
they really do
and stuff. First of all, you cannot provide education for patients just in print because everybody's literacy level is not the same.
Right. And some people, the minute they read, they just get stuck. So they're not going to read any longer. I think that there need to be more education materials out in that lobby.
It needs to be on videos.
Exactly.
It needs to be, because everybody learns differently.
Right.
And there's still going to be that patient that you got to sit down and talk to because neither one of those work.
Now, Dawn, let me ask you something. You had worked for the network, patient advocate, travel around, you know pretty much these LDOs. Now, one of the rights that kidney patients have that I want to know if you see a lot of this is be informed of the facility's internal grievance process.
Absolutely.
Be informed of external grievance mechanisms and process, including how to contact the ESRD network and the state survey agency. Now it says, be informed of his or her right to file internal grievances or external grievance or both without reprisal or denial of service, which we know, that's a question mark for me with a lot of companies, because when you try to do something internal, there are some type of reprisal, possibly denial of service. That's the point. Then it says 17, be informed that he or she may file internal or external grievances personally, anonymously, or through a representative of the patient's group. Then it says B, standard right to be informed regarding the facility's discharge and transfer policies. And the patient has a right to 1, be informed of the facility policies for transfer, routine, or involuntary discharge and discontinuation of services to patients, and 2, receive written notice 30 days in advance of an involuntary discharge after the facility follows the involuntary discharge procedure described and where. But the point is, a lot of patients, when they get admitted, does this kind of is emphasized?
Emphasize
patients.
Come on, you have admitted patients to a dialysis facility, Steve. You know what their patients get. First of all, when you start on dialysis, your uremic, they're giving you 11 pieces of paper to sign. Your brain is cloudy. You're just starting dialysis. You take all that stuff and you throw it in the garbage.
Right. And doing, no one comes back 3 months later and say, how are you doing? Now, when you first initially came, we gave you some information. I understand you was a little disheveled, so I'm gonna give you some more papers, just like the one I gave you, but I'm gonna talk you through them. Since you've been here, do you have any questions? How can I help you adjust to this a little better?
Let me ask you this, both of y'all. We got over 30 years of dialysis experience, but between the two of y'all, have y'all ever had an in-service talk about how to educate your patients if they have a complaint or a grievance?
No, but I educate my patients. Like, if you do have a problem, this is where you can go.
How'd you find that out? On your own?
Trial and error, yeah.
Now, I mean, getting back to what you were saying about me in the past admitting patients, yes, when I get to the grievance part, I tell them, look, this is the chain of command that they want you to go through. And if you can't get it resolved here at the unit, then this is what you do. But I tell them, look, go straight to the state. I say, if it's something you don't like, I mean, you don't have to go through this. You can call the state, but this is the internal grievance process that they want you to follow. Right. But you have a right to go to the state if you don't want to follow this process.
Right. And I always tell them, you have rights. When your social worker come back in, ask her for your rights. Ask her to bring you back out the paper that you signed with your rights. Ask her if she have a copy. Yeah. And here is a highlighter. And you go down there and feel like and mark off what you feel you've been violated on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that's discussed, and this is the thing that I'm fighting so hard for patients to become empowered, learn about this stuff, so that you're not sitting there being a victim and doing it.
But before they be empowered, the patients have to accept their illness.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And that's the most painful part, is acceptance, because their whole life has been transformed in 24 hours.
Okay, Don, how about this? So let me ask you this. I was just reading something, and they were saying in Canada, as just one example, it would be impossible to involuntary discharge a dialysis patient from a treatment center. Now, with that being said, instead of involuntary discharging them from the facility, why don't they offer them home dialysis as an alternative?
Some people can't get that in their home, Steve.
Well, no, but what if they can? I'm just saying, Tamika, that is a different alternative.
If you're a problem patient, that should be the first thing that they offer you, to tell you the truth.
I don't think they do that. I think they just offer you to leave the unit.
That's just my opinion. But, if you're having a problem adjusting to dialysis, you're having a problem being compliant to treatment, you're having a problem following the your dietary regimens and stuff, home dialysis should absolutely be a discussion, because that would eradicate all of those things. If you're not happy with the care that you're receiving in the facility, do it your damn self.
Right.
That's what I did. I didn't like the way I did it, so I came home.
Yeah, I even had a patient didn't like the way he was being sucked, and he began to stick himself, and he said he wished he would have known that he could stick his own self, because a lot of times they don't know that they can stick themselves.
Right. They have a right to be taught self-cannulation. That's
Yep.
So let me ask you that. What happens when you have a unit or a person that wants to do that and the unit doesn't do it? What alternatives do they have?
Then the patient should look for a self-care unit in their area. If there is not a self-care unit, I would call the state.
See, I think the social worker, I think the patient should talk to the social worker, and the social worker and the patient should act like a team and find what the patient needs. Because the social worker knows a little more and has a little better connections than that patient does.
Well, you know what? I say what I say because I know that some of these units, they got one social worker working at 3 or 4 facilities. And I have to, you got to be able to take stuff into your own hands, take responsibility. Yes, you need to go to your social worker. That's what they get paid to do.
They can just print out paper and give it to the patient.
Yeah, yes. But if you're in a situation where this is my life-sustaining treatment and I'm not getting the services that I need, I had to get in my wheelchair and roll up to the computer and find me a facility that was giving me what I needed.
Right.
Because they didn't do what I wanted at my facility. I don't want patients to feel like you always got to wait for somebody to do something for you.
Right.
Don't be codependent. Be independent and do it yourself. You know, some of us can't.
Right.
And I feel, you know, I understand that. But to those of us who can, you know, man, it's smart patients in there. Some of us had great jobs and been to college and no more than the people that work in the facility.
Yep.
Don't just sit back and accept what's given to you. We got to stop that.
Right. So, Don, what do we do? I mean, as we coming down, but to the close, but what do we do? I mean, with the increasing number of patients requiring dialysis treatment, it can be expected that the number of patients who present with disruptive, abusive behaviors will also increase. So what do we do to stymie this problem that could occur in the future and to prevent patients from being blackballed and resorting to the ER to get emergent dialysis as a last resort to live?
Well, as caregivers, I know y'all see it one way. Y'all see it as the patient needs help and the patient, you know, and I see it that way to an extent, but I see it as a patient, you're a human being and you have to take responsibility for your actions. Don't go up in that unit like no fool so that those people can start putting pen to paper and creating a file on you. Don't do it to yourself.
Right.
You know, so my thing is, if something happens, you're not satisfied with your treatment, you have the right to complain. You have the right to go through the chain of command and all of that stuff. But you do not have the right to show your behind in the facility so that they can be writing you up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Don't make yourself that patient.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You got to be reasonable about things. And we all have bad days. I have days where I don't want nobody to say nothing to me.
Right.
But when you go into that unit, this is your life you dealing with. So you gotta make it important to you. We say Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. You gotta pull it together and go through the chain of command so that you're not that patient that they can push out into the emergency room like that. Don't let them do you.
Tamika, what you think? I agree with you with the resources.
Yeah, I totally I think there should be another way to do it, but if you do have to remove that patient, give that patient enough information that they'll be okay.
Yeah.
Or be able to go to another unit. I mean,
yeah, call a couple units and say, unfortunately, we see that this unit right here is not the best fit for you.
Right.
So we're going to make a phone calls to see if you could go to another unit that's maybe a little closer to your home, or put some words,
or maybe have an advocate for them.
Well, I think all the patients, if they're going to get put out of a unit, I think they should have an advocate speak for them. Someone that truly knows the rights, that can sit in that room and be like, no, that's not acceptable. The patient didn't do that to be kicked out the unit.
That's supposed to be the role of your ESRD network.
Well, Dawn, let me tell you.
Don't know that. They don't know.
I've been in dialysis for 21. How old is that boy upstairs? He be 21 years, and I have yet to see anyone advocate for a patient in a situation like this.
And Dawn, isn't the dialysis facilities are required by the CFC to report all involuntary discharges to the network and state agency?
Absolutely. You cannot involuntarily discharge a patient without informing the network. It cannot be done. It cannot.
Wow. This is a great topic. Again, one that I'm sure a lot of
she like doing over there cutting. She like cutting.
Sweating tonight. I'm telling you.
Yeah, Don. Thank you. Again, this was a great topic, and Sunday I'm going to be talking about who shall live, and that back in the 60s they had the what they call a God committee, where patient on dialysis, back then people who got diagnosed with kidney disease that needed dialysis, you couldn't just get on the machine. You had to go through like 4 committees: medical committee, finance,
social worker.
It was something else, and then the final people were the 7 individuals who out of the community who made a decision if you lived or died. And people died. People got turned away. I mean, but
what's going on now in Africa?
Yeah, because they only have a certain. They only had a certain amount of facilities or a certain amount of chairs, so they had to select. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've come a long way.
So it's still going on in this present day. It's just not here that we know of.
Yes.
Yeah. It's sad. So, all right, Don. Well, look, again, thank you for taking the time out, come on our show tonight and give us your take on this, because I mean, it's an emerging trend that's happening. A lot of people don't know about it, and again, that's what we're here to do, to shed light on something that not being talked about.
Yes, indeed. I hope everybody got something out of this tonight. I hope they go to their facilities and look and see, get that information, write it down, keep it in your dialysis bag. So if you need to call and complain or you're not pleased with your services, don't just accept it. Do something about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, all right, Don. I guess we'll catch you next time.
All right, now.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks for coming on.
All right, love y'all.
All right, love you too. Take care. Oh, Don. Before we let you go, what's coming up? Anything special going on in the kidney world that warriors need to know about pertaining to COVID or anything?
I'm so tired of COVID. I don't know what to do. I just want to go away. Oh gosh, everybody, please just wear your mask and stay safe so we can
wash your hands.
Oh my gosh. As far as New York is concerned, we're over the hump, and and we're kind of sitting easy right now. But as you see, the rest of the country is on fire. I mean, we have like 41 states that are in really bad shape,
You know
especially
why?
Arizona, Houston, California, and Georgia, and Texas. They are
South
in
Carolina.
shape.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, so I was in South Carolina this weekend, and no one had a mask on.
That's right.
Driving to South Carolina and coming home from South Carolina, no one had on masks. I was able to go in stores, and people had no mask on. Of course, I had a mask because I'm not playing it, but they had no mask on.
Yeah.
We were at an event, and these people had no mask on in South Carolina.
And
So if you hear that South Carolina has a spike, Virginia has a spike, North Carolina has a spike, there's no signs that says masks are required.
Nope. Because the governors are not allowing that. They're not allowing the mask ordinance in New York. You can't even, we don't even have our malls and stuff open yet.
Wow.
You can't congregate more than 10 people outside here. Our stuff, we still locked down. I mean,
it's very so fast.
Slowly, but our governor is not playing. And anybody that comes up here, like if at the airport, if you coming from one of those hot states, they want your contact information. They want to know where you're going, and you're supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks.
And I don't blame them. Seriously, after seeing what I've seen in South Carolina, I don't blame them. I do not blame them. These people was willy-nilly, and they didn't care. They were sitting around each other with no mask on, hee and ha, and I was right on the side looking at them like, y'all crazy. This is real.
Yeah. So it's real out there, y'all. There's over 3 million people with it now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and numbers are going up daily. They are finding better ways to treat it, so it's not killing people like it was. Thank God, you know.
You know, my mom had it, and we went the holistic approach. So we did the honey and the ginger and the aloe every day versus the aspirin, so she doesn't get a blood clot. We went the holistic approach, and my mom was fine. My sister had it, my brother-in-law had it, my grandmother had it, my aunt, all from one person. Like 8 people got it in my family, and we went the holistic approach, and that's how they made it with no complications.
Yeah. Well,
and we don't advise everybody to do that. You gotta, you know, assess your own situation. But this is what Tamika done, so we just want to tell everybody.
The ginger
check with your doctor.
Not gonna hurt with anyone.
I just tell everybody, don't believe the hype. I believe COVID is airborne. I believe it is because the people are catching it too easily. Wear your mask, wash your hands, be careful who you're around. Don't let people in your house. You know, and just really try to be safe, because if you got kidney disease, it is very hard to fight that off.
It is. And
fight it off.
What I noticed was the patients that actually have the COVID, they start to transition on the machine. So it's not like the quote unquote normal person, it takes 2 or 3 days. Once they get it and they come to dialysis, they start getting sick on the machine.
Yeah. And look at what happens. It affects the blood. The blood starts to clot. So, come on now. I mean, you got to think about it.
I've seen some patients who had mental status changes because of it.
Yes.
Yep.
Don't believe the hype. I mean, you know, it's not something for us kidney patients to play with. Healthy people can do what they want to do, but we got to protect ourselves.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right, Don. Well, again, thanks for coming on tonight. I like your green screen.
Thank you.
Background.
Thank y'all for having me. I'm going to try to get some better light next time so you can see my gorgeous face a little better.
Okay.
All right, that's like you're doing good on home dialysis.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank God. I'm so glad I'm home. I don't know what to do.
Yes. I'm glad you're home too, Dawn.
Yeah.
You have such a better quality of life doing home dialysis.
Much better, much better. We got to do some shows about that too.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Champions, a shout out, all my CKD champions, Stephanie and Aaron and Cecilia and Shelba. Shout out to y'all, and Lisa and Jared. I saw y'all flashing up on the screen. I love
All
y'all.
right. All right, Don. Catch you on the other side.
All right, baby. Love you.
All right.
I don't know how they wear these.
Yeah. All right, Tamika. This was a great show. I'm glad we finally got to talking about, blackballed. And again, I mean, there's arguments on both sides, but the main thing is for patients to be safe and secure in that unit undergoing dialysis. No one should be subjected to someone being disruptive and putting other people's lives in danger while they undergoing kidney dialysis treatment.
Right.
Absolutely.
I really think that they should have like a transient unit, and the patient can only stay there for 6 weeks. And within the 6 weeks, they'll be able to find the unit, get some mental help and something like that, and go on to the next phase.
Maybe a company may come up with something like that. You never know.
This way, they don't have to go to the hospital to get dialyzed. They do have a place to go. They know that they're only there for 6 weeks. It gives them time to get some mental health if that's what the issue is, and they'll be able to transition into a normal unit.
Mm-hmm.
I think
maybe like a small unit, like a 6-chair unit.
Like 6 chairs, right? Or even 4 chairs.
Yeah.
And then also a transient unit for patients who don't have medical yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but think outside the box. Don't just throw them out. Think outside the box. Find an alternative for them because their lives matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, who we got planned for next week? Not sure yet?
No.
Okay.
Not sure yet. Working on something.
All right. Sounds good.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, we're over 23 minutes, but I think that was a great show that we did. And now people know that an estimated 1,000 people each year are involuntary discharge, whether it's disruptive behavior, mental health problems, maybe can't pay. But again, that shouldn't be no reason unless someone's in imminent danger that they be discharged. So, all right, Tamika.
All right.
Go ahead, take a break.
All right. You get some rest.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching us. Urban Renal Talk with Stephen.
Tamika. Good night, everyone. And remember, your kidneys matter.
Absolutely. All right, Tamika. I'll talk to you soon, babe.
Okay. Good night. Right.
Good night, everyone. God bless.
I've been walking beneath streetlights. I've been walking, cause I can't find peace on these nights. I've been walking, but my strides are getting slower. Still I'm walking, but I don't know where I'm going. I've been looking for love, but only found deception. Told my secrets to some people who